Is that okay, Paige? Can you
Yes,
unmute
sorry, I
yourself?
was giving you the visual thumbs up, but
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
no, it's all good. Don't worry.
I okay. Um, so the recording is started. I'm now going to turn. It gives me great pleasure to turn the meeting over to Paige, who will be talking to us now. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Paige, I'm an alcoholic. And welcome to all those that were new or coming back or just coming to this meeting for the first time. I'm so glad you're here with us. And thank you so much for putting a timer on the screen. That will be helpful. You're crushing it with service. I appreciate it. All righty. Yeah, I was asked if I could do a talk. And so often I love to share my experience, strength, and hope through a format that is known as the Big Book Bounce Around. And if you've not ever heard of that before, it's because I made it up. And so what we're going to be doing, if you have your book to hand, grab it. We're going to be bouncing around the big book, and goodness gracious, if you don't got the book to hand or you're driving, please be safe. Don't worry about it. I'm going to read everything. So you can sit back and listen if you want. And what I sort of felt called to speak upon was this idea of grace and this idea of the economy of grace. And to juxtapose what I'm talking about, I need to share with you what my life was looking like when I was living on my own power, when I was living based on self-will, when I did not have access to this grace. And so if you're bouncing around with me, let's pop over to page 21. And let's see what it looks like when I'm rocking and rolling on my power. When I'm trying to run my life, when I have got the economy of girl, she is going broke physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. That sort of economy. So, page 21, what about the real alcoholic? It says he may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker, but at some stage of his drinking career, and goodness gracious, let me tell you, I was making it a career. I was burning that midnight oil. I wasn't doing a 9 to 5. I was clocking in all the overtime I could get. I was not climbing the corporate ladder. I was bottoming out behind a dumpster, but close enough. Uh, but at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. Now we can pause and we can ask ourselves, is this my experience? Is my experience that once I take a drink, that more often than not, there's something inside of me that sets off and tells me I need more? And if you're an alcoholic like I'm an alcoholic, and if we're hanging out today, you probably are. But if you're an alcoholic like I'm an alcoholic, you know what that means. When you take that drink and something inside of you, it's like for me, a switch gets flipped and it tells me more. And then the more that I drink, the louder that more gets. You see, I start to drink and I get thirstier. And I'll just be quite transparent with you guys. That doesn't happen to me with any other beverage. Not once. Not once in my life have I started my morning with an Earl Grey tea and then gone on a 3-day Earl Grey tea bender. Just not once. It's not happened. You know, not once in my life have I had my morning cup of tea and then found myself, scrounging through the pantry looking for a box of chamomile and snorting it because it's got to be the same. I just have a cup of tea. So that is an abnormal reaction that happens to somebody like me once I take a drink. And it doesn't set off every single time, but it sets off more often than it doesn't. And non-alcoholics never experience it. They never experience that thing where they say, I'm going to go out for 3 drinks and end up missing the mark, end up overshooting, end up drinking beyond consequences that I said that I would never hit. You see, I don't know about you. I drink myself beyond lines in the sand. I drink myself into lost jobs, opportunities, careers, dreams, hopes, relationships, dignity, self-respect. Never mind my shoes. I lost them several blocks ago. Uh, some of you guys know what's up, right? And I can't control the amount that I take. And it says, here is the fellow who has been puzzling you, especially in his lack of control, that inability to control it. Once I start to drink, it says he's a real Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And that's who I am, a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Now, and an interesting thing about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde It's a book written by Robert Louis Stevenson, and it is a beautiful metaphor for his own struggles with alcoholism and addiction. You see, Dr. Jekyll creates this potion, and he takes this potion, and man, it feels good going down. You guys know what I mean? Oh, it feels good. He feels alive, big and strong and powerful. But then something turns. And he turns into this Mr. Hyde, this monster that terrorizes the city, terrorizes London. Man, he's crossing lines he never wanted to cross. But what is Dr. Jekyll's real problem? His real problem is not that the potion turns him again and again and again into Mr. Hyde. No, his real potion, or his real problem, is that he goes back to that potion again and again and again. And as an alcoholic, man, that is my real problem. Not that once I start, I cannot control it. No, my real problem is that I know that once I take that first drink, it's going to set off in me and I'm going to burn it to the ground again. But I go back to it again. That is my problem, the obsession of the mind. And it says he is seldom mildly intoxicated. That means when I am drinking is my experience that I am rarely a little tipsy, or is my experience when I'm drinking that I am more or less insanely drunk. It says his disposition while drinking resembles his normal nature but little. He may be one of the finest fellows in the world, yet let him drink for a day and he frequently becomes disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial. The things that I do when I'm drinking, the things that I do on my sprees, man, I don't know about you. I come to the morning after and I am plagued with remorse and regret and shame. And I want to bury those things. In fact, I'll pop over to that here in a bit. I want to bury those things far inside of myself. I don't want to look at them. I don't want to see them. I want to pretend they're not there, man. I hate who I am. I hate who I've become. I can't look myself in the mirror. My life is one that is absolutely unrecognizable to somebody like me. And it says he is a positive genius for getting tight at exactly the wrong moment. Particularly when some important decision must be made or engagement kept. Man, is my experience that I get drunk at the worst possible moment. Is my experience that, man, the charges would be dropped. I would pass the class. My family would forgive me. I'd have a place to stay if I just don't take that first drink. And wouldn't you know it? I take that first drink. That is my problem. And it says, he is often perfectly sensible and well balanced concerning everything except liquor. But in that respect, he is incredibly dishonest and selfish. He often possesses special abilities, skills, and aptitudes and has a promising career ahead of him. He uses his gifts to build up a bright outlook for his family and himself, then pulls the structure down on his head by a senseless series of sprees. Now, this is what my life is like when I am living on my own power, when I'm trying to run my life, all my effort, all my energy, everything that I can muster, my intellect, my energy, my emotion, my thoughts, my effort, all of it is in rebuilding again and again and again and again and again the structures of my life. And man, I just barely get the scaffolding up more times than not. And I tear it to the ground again and again and again. And you see, I don't know about you, but in that economy, the economy of Paige, man, my life is a dumpster fire. And I rebuild it again and again and again. And it gets burnt to the ground again and again and again. And it all gets wasted, all that energy, all that effort. And man, I am giving it my all. I'm giving it my best. And let's talk about how, man, everything gets wasted. If you're bouncing around in your book today, let's pop over. Let's pop over to page 73. Page 73 of our book. And what we're going to have a look is more than most people. First full paragraph, about halfway down the page, or a quarter down the page, page 73. More than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. Is that my experience? It says he's very much the actor. To the outer world, he presents a stage character. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. See, I don't know about you, but the most pain that I've ever been in my life is where the masks and the walls and the ego and image is a far that I'm trying to present to the world is a far cry from who I am on the inside and how I'm really doing. How you doing, Paige? Oh, I'm fine. Oh, I'm fine. I used to always say I'm all the better for the inquiry, just and that is about a polite, please don't ask any further questions as I got. And it says the inconsistency is made worse by the things he does on his sprees. Coming to his senses, he is revolted at certain episodes he vaguely remembers. These memories are a nightmare. He trembles to think someone might have observed him. As fast as he can, he pushes these memories far inside himself. He hopes that they will never see the light of day. He is under constant fear and tension. That makes for more drinking. And you see what happens is those things that I've done, they become liabilities in my life. And I start to hide them and I try to keep them a secret and I try to shove who I am deep inside myself, but it's still there. The haunting ghosts, the specters of my past screaming from the depths of me, man, who I am is not enough. I am irreparably bad and broken and flawed. And that is what is coming from the depths of me. And I try everything I can to push that down and it's not enough. And you see, I don't know about you, but I burn it to the ground, drunk or sober. All my effort doesn't work, drunk or sober. Let's pop over to page 52. Page 52. And what we'll have a look at is what is often known as the benevolence. And this is what I am like when I am separated from alcohol, but my illness is not treated. Page 52, second full paragraph, about halfway down the page. This is my experience sober. This is my experience just trying to not take that first drink. This is what it is like when I'm on my own power. It says we had to ask ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems. Now, what we're referring to now is the spiritual malady. The spiritual malady is not limited to alcoholics. It is not diagnostic of alcoholism. I always like to make the joke, if you're not sure, if you think we got the market cornered on spiritual sickness, goodness gracious, just go check out your local PTA or HOA. You'll find lots of spiritually sick people. Go shop at Aldi's, you'll find them. Or is it Asda's? I can't remember. But you'll find them, right? We don't have the market cornered. But in Alcoholics Anonymous, that is what we treat. How we diagnose alcoholism is what separates us from others. The allergy of the body, once I start, I cannot stop, and the obsession of the mind. When I say I'm not going to do it again, I find that a day, a week, a month later, I'm doing it again. That's how we diagnose this illness. But what we need to treat is the spiritual malady, and this is what it looks like. This is the best that I can muster on my own power, even sometimes when the outside looks okay. And I'll be honest with you, never in my life did the outside look okay. It says, we had to ask ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems the same readiness to change our point of view. We're having trouble with personal relationships. Was I losing my relationships? Were they not working? Was I always in conflict? Or was I not in conflict, but doing everything I could to avoid conflict and having my insides eat me alive? We couldn't control our emotional natures. Am I all over the place, filled with anger and sadness and worry, anxiety? And do I feel like I'm swinging from emotion to emotion, not finding any sort of equilibrium? It says we were a prey to misery and depression. Was that feeling of misery, that feeling of hopelessness? Man, I'm so depressed I can't get out of bed. Was that on me? Like a cheetah chasing a rabbit. It's on me and I can't escape. And it says we couldn't make a living. Now, couldn't make a living doesn't mean you don't have a job, although that was my experience for a lot of time. Am I underemployed? Am I spending more money? Am I spending faster than it's coming in? Am I miserable at work? Do I hate my life? Is my work life just awful and agony? Am I having panic attacks before I get into the office? I can't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. see all the effort that I could put into the economy of my life, man, I still have this feeling of uselessness. It's not working. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. I can't seem to be of real help to other people. I don't know about you. I wanted to be. I wanted to be, but my best efforts weren't enough. And it says, was not a solution to these bedevilments more important than whether she should see newsreels of lunar flight? Of course it was. It was not a solution to this more important than my opinions and my thoughts and my ideas about things. And the truth of the matter is, man, doing it my way just was not working. It just was not working. And so let's have a look. Let's pop over to page 128. And let's see the transition that I can take from going from my economy to a whole different economy. Page 128. And it says, very bottom paragraph, and I'll give us a second. Very bottom paragraph, page 128. I know we're bouncing today. Sometimes it's not so bouncy, but we are bouncing, that's for sure. So it says, he is not so unbalanced as they might think. And it's talking about the alcoholic who has recovered from the seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. It's this idea that enjoying this life that is laid before us, he's not so imbalanced as they might think. Most of us have experienced Dad's elation, joy. That's what's on the other side of this thing. Not just don't drink and go to meetings. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be sober. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about elation. We're talking about freedom. Freedom, that is what's on offer. It says we've indulged in spiritual intoxication. Now bear with me with this thing. That spiritual intoxication. I don't know about you, but I couldn't stay well on one drink. Anyone here ever have one drink and thought, boy, that's great. That's enough. I'm having a good time. Just one. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And you see, my experience is I can't stay well on one spiritual experience. I can't stay well on one spiritual awakening. And so oftentimes we'll hear people share about, or we'll read about Bill Wilson's spiritual awakening or Fitz Mayo's spiritual awakening, some of these co-founders, about the experience that they had. And we think, oh man, I can't have one like that. And here's what I'll share with you. Not once in my life. And we can ask ourselves, hey, is this our experience? I'll throw it out to you guys. Anyone here, when you were drinking, anyone here get a glass? I know I've already lost some of you with that. A glass? You want me to drink out of a glass? Lost some of you. Get a glass. And you pour your alcohol into it. And you get some ice. You put some ice in there. I've lost some of you already. And then we have just a sip. Just that sip of alcohol. And we set it down. And we watch as the ice begins to melt. Anyone relate to that? No. You know how I know? Because when we're at a restaurant and we see other people doing that, it drives us nuts. It's like, girl, what are you doing? Get it in you. But what happens is I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's how I want to take the program of action. I want to take it in sips. I want to take my time. And by the way, take my time is often sitting on it. I want to sit on that 4th step because I'm afraid of step 5. I want to sit on step 8 because I'm afraid of step 9. I want to take my time. But my experience is if I were to slowly sip, which is impossible for somebody like me, a drink of alcohol, I'm not going to get the effect. And it is just like that with Alcoholics Anonymous. I need to go after this thing with all the desperation of a drowning man. I need to go after this thing like my life depends on it because it does. Because it does. Man, I don't want to wade in. I want to dive in. I want to jump because I need the solution. Because nothing less than the solution that we have on offer and the solution that we have in Alcoholics Anonymous is a spiritual awakening, and nothing less than that. Nothing less than a spiritual awakening and an alcoholic of my type. Me. I'm talking about me. I will drink again, or I will get so miserable that I kill myself. And that's my two options. That's my two options for somebody like me. I'm not telling you what your options are. I'm not telling you what you got to do. But what I got to do is I got to go after this thing with all the desperation of a drowning man. I got to work these steps like my life depends on it, because it does. And it says, like a gaunt prospector, belt drawn in over the last ounce of food, our pick struck gold. I don't know. Yeah, if some of you guys, I see the hamburgers. We got them. So what does it mean to be a prospector? Well, in the 1800s, where I lived in Canada, they had the Yukon Gold Rush. Gold was found in the remote wilderness of northern Canada, and people hoping to make some money, traveled by the droves in the 1800s to the remote wilderness of Canada to try to make their luck, try to strike it rich, try to come back with gold. And you see what happened is these people would be out there in the wilderness, just like I was in the wilderness of my alcoholism. And you see, with my alcoholism, I had a pickaxe, and actually I'll start with panning for gold. You see, one of the ways to get gold is to dig in the riverbeds and to let water help to wash away all that is not gold. And you see, what that looked like in my experience was I was out there and I was in that wilderness and I was trying to pan for gold. And what that looked like was I was trying to exert some power and control over that physical allergy. And I don't know about you, but I was out there and I was giving it my best to avoid the consequences of not being able to control the amount that I drank once I started. And I would put everything that I could think of, and even some ones that I knew weren't going to work. Taking drinks of water in between drinks weren't going to help. I thought some non-conference approved dry goods in between drinks would help, and they did for a little, but those were good old alcoholic enhancers. I was finding bottom quick, I was burning out quick. And I would look for all these ways to control this physical allergy. And it wasn't working. It just wasn't working. I could not find an answer. And I was coming up with nothing, coming up with nothing, coming up with nothing. And then I came to realize, man, I can't be looking for gold here. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. I cannot ever safely drink again. And if you're somebody like me, man, I burnt it to the ground again and again and again, trying to control my drinking, trying to control and enjoy my drinking. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And I tried everything and anything that I could, and it didn't work. And so I realized I can't go looking for gold there. The gold can't be found in trying to control my drinking. I got to go and I got to be sober. I'd look at the wreckage of my life and the pain and the suffering, and I would look at who I was, and it was not who I wanted to be, and I needed to be sober, and I wanted to be sober. And what I would do is I would pick up my pickaxe, because this was some hard work. And I would be digging, and I would be digging in the side of a mountain. I would be digging, and I would be given everything that I could to dig through this mountain. And man, it was work. And I would be doing everything and anything that I could to think of to not take that first drink. Anything and everything. Now, here's my experience. I did not try everything there was, but everything that I tried failed. And here's what it looked like for me. I would try getting into shape. Man, there was some of you guys know, I'm not anti-gym. You can go, I have a sponsee that was like, I know you're so against going to the gym. I'm not against going to the gym. Go to the gym. But here's what I will say. I had abs, not recently. I really enjoy carbs and cheese. So I have not had abs in a long time, But there was a time in my life that I had abs. Abs, not once, led to abstinence. I promise you, I was ripped, but I kept getting ripped. You know what I'm saying? So I would try going to the gym, and I would try working out, and I would drink again. And I would try doctors, and I would try psychologists, and I would try psychiatrists, and I would drink again. And there's nothing wrong. Again, just like going to the gym, there's nothing wrong with doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists. There's nothing wrong with that. But I would drink again. And I would try getting into a relationship. Ooh, I try getting out of that relationship, and then I get in, then get out, get in, get out. I'm sure nobody relates to that. But I did a whole bunch of that, and I could not stay sober. And I would try the geographic. I would move to different places, and I would try, man, I tried different jobs. I tried going to university. I tried all of these things. And here's my experience. Everything that I tried failed. And now at first, I mean, it's the hopelessness begins to settle in. You know, I'm lost in this Canadian wilderness. I promise you, it is not nice weather up in the Yukon this time of year. It would be February. It's February now, so it's cold in Calgary, and I'm in the south of Canada. It would be very cold in the Yukon. And I've got no food. I'm running low on supplies. I'm running low on hope. And I've been using all of my energy, all of my resources to just not take that first drink, and it does not work. What happens for me is a day, a week, a month, several months down the line, I will get a thought. And that thought happens in my mind. And that thought happens when I am as sober as I am today. And that thought will tell me a lie that I believe. And that little lie is, this time will be different. Nobody will ever know. I'll go out for 3 drinks. You know, my problem is drugs, but I can drink like a lady. Some of you guys know I do nothing like a lady, not now, not ever. But it looks like, you know, if you're feeling the way that I was feeling, you'd have to get drunk too. It looks like if you were going through what I was going through, you'd have to take a drink. It looks like, man, I'm going to kill myself anyway, so why don't I get drunk? It looks like a little bit of self-awareness. Why don't I take a drink or two? I'll take the edge off. I'll be nicer to everyone. And then my relapse becomes a public service. You're welcome. By which I mean I apologize profusely. I'll have to be back around again for the amends, because that's my bad on the TV. Also, if you're not currently engaged with a sponsor working these steps, my bad is not how we make amends in Alcoholics Anonymous. I just thought I would throw that out there. That's not my bad. That's not how we do it. All right. It also looks like a thought that is on me all day. Take a drink, 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 until the little amount of willpower, self-knowledge, resistance, what little barrier, defense that I could muster is whittled away, and I take that drink. But it also looks like a case of the suddenlies. I'm out there and I'm living my life, and a thought comes to mind. I got a drink in my hand, and I don't know how it happened. And I'm running out of options. The cold winter is settling in. And to be a gaunt prospector, I'm out of food. My belt is drawn in. I'm wasting away all my time and all my energy. There is no hope. There is no hope for somebody like me. And then it says, our pick struck gold. And you see what happens is a recovered alcoholic, an alcoholic who has found the solution, who is properly armed with facts about themselves. They direct me. They lead me to the solution, which is a spiritual awakening, and tell me the direction in which I need to dig, which is these 12 steps. And I start to direct my energy at digging in that direction, and I strike gold. I strike gold. I find gold. I find an answer. And it says, and that gold is the spiritual awakening. That gold that happens as the result of these 12 steps. It says joy at a release from a lifetime of frustration, knew no bounds. That's what's on offer here in Alcoholics Anonymous. Not just don't take that first drink. And if you're like me, I can't not take that first drink. Joy. A joy that I've never experienced before, because I got a lifetime of frustration, a lifetime of pain, a lifetime of suffering, and I find joy. And it says, Father feels that he has struck something better than gold. And you see, when we talk about the economy of grace, what we find is something better than gold. Better than gold. For a time, he might try to hug the new treasure to himself. And oftentimes we hear that saying, you know, to keep what I have, I've got to give it away. And I would hear that in the rooms, and I thought it was a little like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. And I'm like, well, that didn't make sense, because why else would I want cake but to eat it? And if it's super fancy cake with the fondant on it, that's not tasty. So I would like the eating one of the cake. And I was like, that conceptually does not make sense to somebody like me. But the reason I didn't understand it, and what I've come to understand, is that we don't really have paradoxes in Alcoholics Anonymous. We have things that we say that are not in line with the program of action of Alcoholics Anonymous, or we have things that are experiential. I could not understand what it meant to keep what I have to give it away. And the reason I did not understand it was because I did not have it, because I did not have the spiritual awakening. And then the spiritual awakening, man, it is one of the things that throughout history, people who have had a solution like this, who have found a spiritual awakening, entire psychic change, there is something that happens. One of the most sure signs that we have had this thing is the desire to help somebody else find it. You see, when I am no longer filled up with me, and what the me that I'm talking about is a selfish, self-centered, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. That version of me, when I'm no longer filled up with me, but I'm filled up with this power and presence of something beyond myself, man, I can't not help but give it away. I want to give it away. I want other people to find what I have found. It's like I'm so filled up, I'm overflowing. That doesn't mean if you're not feeling that way that you don't help others, though. Because I know how, if your brain works like mine, like, I don't feel like that. I don't want to help people. Go help people, and then it'll feel like that. And here's how we know. It says, for a time, he may try to hug the new treasure for himself. You see, in the economy of me, it is about what can I get? I'm trying to get from you my sense of value, my sense of worth, my sense of esteem, my sense of who I am. And I promise you, it is never enough, because the more that I get, the more that I need. You give me a little bit of validation, a little bit of attention, a little bit of whatever it is to take the edge off, and I need more. And the more that I get, the more that I need. That's never enough. If instant gratification was so good, why does it only last an instant? And I'm chasing it. And I'm selling my soul for just one little second of attaboy, good job. Or I'm selling my soul for, just something so I don't have to be with me. And that is the economy of Paige. I'll show up filled with judgment and criticism and how the world is wrong. And that fuels my own sense of insecurity. And I'm fueled by that, by my own sense of insecurity. But that then fuels my insecurity even more. And it's a cycle, and it's never enough. But this is the economy of grace. He may not see at once that he's barely scratched a limitless load. Man, this is a vein of gold that never runs dry. I'm not trying to search for little nuggets in that riverbed that I couldn't ever find. Man, I would find that fool's gold of, I got a relationship, a fool's gold of approval, fool's gold of material success, but it wasn't the real thing. And I would find myself drunk again. And you see, we get to find the real thing, the real gold, something of depth and weight, and it never runs dry. There's no limit to this thing. But here is what I am asked to do. It says, he may not see at once that he has barely scratched limitless load, which will pay dividends. So it is paying dividends. Now, I'm actually not good at money and business stuff, clearly. But when we talk about paying dividends, what that means is that initial investment is paying us back more than we invested. So the gold that I mine, man, I'm going to get even more than the gold that I mine. But how I get that is only if I mine it for the rest of my life. See, these 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's not a project. It's not a thing that I do and I'm done with. It's not a thing that I did. It is how I live my life today. I live my life, continue on a daily basis to live these 12 steps in my life. So I've got to mine it for the rest of my life. And I insist on giving away the entire product. You see, the more that I give to others, the more that I receive. And that is the economy of grace. The more that I give, the more that I receive. Now let's go have another little bounce around. Let's pop over to page 124. And what we're going to pick up on is the very first paragraph, Henry Ford, and it doesn't really matter who said it, once made a wise remark to the effect that experience is the thing of supreme value in life. What do I have to share in Alcoholics Anonymous? I have to share my experience, not my opinions, not my theories, not my beliefs, but my experience with my alcoholism, with the physical allergy, my experience with the obsession of the mind, but also my experience with these 12 steps as a way of life, and my experience with the spiritual awakening. That is what is of supreme value in life. Man, when I was out there, you know what I thought was king was my ideas, my grand plans and designs. They didn't come into fruition because I couldn't, that required taking some effort on them, and I was too busy getting drunk and wallowing in self. I'm sure you guys can't relate to that. But this is what we're talking about. You see, when I'm on self, it all gets wasted. It's all on the scrap heap. But in the economy of grace, nothing gets wasted. It says, this is true only. My experience is the thing of supreme value only if one is willing to turn the past to good account. And how do I do that? And just as how do I mine that gold? Man, I pick up the axe and I point it in the direction of the 12 steps. How do I turn the past to good account? That is the purpose of these 12 steps. It says we grow by our willingness to face and rectify errors and convert them into assets. How do I face my errors? I face them in step 4. I face them in step 5. I face them in step 6. And how do I rectify them? How do I make that right? I begin to do that in step 7. I do that in step 8, and I do that in step 9. And that process of 4 through 9 converts my dark past, the worst things about who I thought I was, into the most powerful thing that I have. Convert them into assets. You see, when I get here, I am all liabilities. And in the economy of grace, it all gets turned to assets. Not by just coming to meetings, not by just talking about it, but the process of 4 through 9. And again, I got to keep this rolling in 10, 11, 12. This is a way of life. The worst things that I've ever done, the depth of my shame, the depth of my pain, it gets radically transformed into gifts and into blessings that I get to use to help another person. It says the alcoholic's past thus becomes the principal asset. Principal as in the main asset, the asset upon which I am drawing upon. The worst things I've ever done. And it says of the family, and frequently it is almost the only one. The painful past may be of infinite value. Man, that same painful past that I was trying to shove deep inside of myself, that I was pouring alcohol on so I wouldn't have to look at it, but I knew it was there screaming at me. That same painful past is now of infinite value to the families still struggling with their problem. We think each family which has been relieved owes something to those who have not. And wouldn't you know about it? This economy of grace, see, I talk about it how I owe Alcoholics Anonymous debt. And it is a debt that I can never repay. And here's how I know that to be true. Because every time I repay it, now I'll point out we don't have spiritual debt collectors in the sense that, if you got collection companies calling you, alcoholic collection companies? No, we would never. But it's not like the collection company. In fact, it's a little different. The debt that I am called to repay, the collection company, is an alcoholic that needs my help. It's at a meeting that needs my service. It's somebody that needs to be taken through these 12 steps. Somebody who needs help with their inventory. Somebody who needs help with their amends. Somebody who needs help in working these 12 steps with another person. That is the spiritual debt collector. And man, wouldn't you know it, I go and I repay my debt. And I do everything I can to repay this debt. But wouldn't you know it, the more I repay it, the more I receive, and the further in debt I get. I can't ever repay this. The more I try, the more I receive. So we think each family which is relieved owes something to those who have not. And when the occasion requires, each member of it should be only too willing to bring former mistakes, no matter how grievous, out of their hiding places. Showing others who suffer how we were given help is the very thing which makes life seem so worthwhile to us now. And here's my experience. You see, when I sit down with another alcoholic, when I go through the steps, I'll start there. When I go through the steps in step 4, I write down some of that stuff. I write down some of the depth of my shame, the depth of my pain. I write down those deep, dark secrets. And I share it with God and another human being in step 5. And some of it begins to dissipate. And I go and I spend that quiet hour. I do my 6 and 7. And in 6 and 7, man, there is a God that meets me where I'm at, that comes to me, that wants to use me, not in spite of the things that I've done, but because of them. And we see that is true here. I don't have time to pop us over to the 7-step prayer, but we see that here. A God that wants me, a God that's going to use me, not in spite of the things I've done, but because of them, that I get to be of use to this power. And I go out and I make some amends, and that guilt and that shame that was all that I knew, that all that I could see, begins to fall away. But here's what happens. You see, it really is when I sit down eyeball to eyeball, face to face with another alcoholic. By the way, face to face can be Zoom screen to Zoom screen. When I sit down with another alcoholic and I take them through this work and they get to the 5th step and they share with me that deep, dark secret, that thing that they never wanted to share with another human being, that thing that they wanted to kill themselves behind, that thing they were drinking themselves behind. Man, I want you to know they share that with me, and how I see them changes, but not in the way that you might expect. You see, I love them more. I love them more. I'm a fall down failure of an alcoholic, a fall down failure of a drunk. I'm pissing my pants behind a dumpster. I can't stay sober on my own power. And I love them more. And it's a reminder, if that is how this silly little drunk can feel about you, imagine how the power and the presence of God might feel about you. I'm not doing better than God. We know that to be true, because on my economy, man, I can't stay sober. I can't be free of self. I can't overcome my bedevilments. I can't be free of my resentments. I can't do nothing about fear. I continue to act in ways that harm others. I can't get rid of my defects. And that is how I feel about you. Imagine now how God, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe, might feel about you. And that becomes the economy of grace. And it says, cling to the thought that in God's hands. You see, when it's in my hands, the dumpster is on fire and careening off a cliff. But in God's hands, the dark past is the greatest possession you have. Now, how do I get it in God's hands? That the liability to assets. I work these 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. That is how I turn it and I convert it. And it says, cling to the thought that in God's hands, the dark past is the greatest possession you have. The key to life and happiness for others. With it, you can avert death and misery for them. See, this whole thing, I like to turn things on their heads, and old sayings that aren't necessarily true, that aren't aligned with what we talk about or what our experience is in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I would hear, just put the plug in the jug. Keep the plug in the jug. That's all you got to do. I can't do that. But more than that, I can't do that with the spiritual awakening. I've got to share this with others. My very life depends on it. And when I do, I find going from the bedevilments of feeling of uselessness and self-pity, I get to be at this place where my life has meaning and purpose. And I get to be of real help. And I get to help others, not despite of the things that I've done, but because of the things I've done. I get to say, yes, me too. Yes, me too, I drank that way. Yes, me too, I went through that. Yes, me too, that happened to me. And here is how I got freedom from it. And I get to help other people. And I have 2 stories. Now, the first story happened when I was 18 months into my sobriety. And just over a year and a half sober, I very suddenly developed a neurological condition which left me in the use of a wheelchair. And it was more than that. I lost the ability to walk without assistance. I lost the ability to read. Like I had to learn how to read again in Alcoholics Anonymous. Actually, I was like making the joke. What that means is I had to learn how to say anonymity in front of all of y'all twice. Listen, I don't need pity, but I feel like that deserves a gold star or something, you know? I was in chronic nausea. Y'all know when you get the spinning bed? I have that, but sober. Fun. I had all these neurological symptoms.
5 minutes.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I'm on time. Thank you so much. Don't you worry, I'm landing the plane. I was having all these neurological symptoms. And, I had this moment of gratitude, but it didn't last. And I was going through a period of time that so many of us go through, where we're losing people like us. And where it was death after death after death, and funeral after funeral after funeral. And I didn't know, I'm sober, I'm sort of doing the things I'm supposed to be doing. What is the point of my life? I'm not gonna, I was really, really ill, and I'm not a pinnacle of health either, but I was really, really ill. And I could barely get out of bed, and I was like, what's the point of my life? Why am I here? Why am I sober? What is the point of all of this? And there was one more death and one more funeral, and I didn't want to do it. I wanted to do the emotional turtle where I put the blanket over my head and I'm done. I don't want to do it. And then God shows up, as God often does, with an alcoholic in need of help. And he calls me up and says, Paige, I need you to be there for me. I need you to show up for this funeral because you taught me well I did. And I remember that was a very dark time in my life. And the only time I ever felt that fourth dimension, that time I only ever felt that presence of connection and the consciousness of God, when I was doing something for another alcoholic or another person that I didn't want to be doing. And I remember sitting in front of the house in my wheelchair. The sun was shining and the birds, they were tweeting, and I felt that presence. And I got picked up and we went to the funeral, and it was heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to watch parents bury their children. A young man who died of this illness, and it was hard. And as we were leaving the service, there was another woman in a wheelchair, and she came up to me and she said, I'm so glad you're here because I don't feel so alone. And I don't have a life that is, I really don't think I'm meant to have a life that is like clearly corporate, whatever, a big successful in those ways. But you see, when I am doing this thing, I get to be an agent for God. And I get to be a light for those in the darkness. I get to let people know that they are not alone and that there is a way out. And a couple of years ago, I sat with my uncle as he was dying. And it was 9 days of absolute hell. It was a good man dying a horrific death that he did not deserve. And he was crying out in unbearable pain, unbearable agony. And what happened, it took me a while to realize what happened, but what happened after that is I developed symptoms that I'm like, oh, that's probably PTSD. Basically, by figuring things out. I'm a slow learner. And it would come and those symptoms hit. And they hit. And when they're on me, they're on me. And I am diligent. I mean, I'm really doing this thing. I do not slouch, man. I work this thing like my life depends on it, because it does. I work this thing because the life that this has given me is beyond anything that I could have imagined. But when it hits, it's on me. And I couldn't find a solution for it. I couldn't find an answer for it. But I came to the realization that if I am present to it, if those times when the pain and the suffering is on me, if I am present to that, I know the economy of grace. I will, and I have been able, I don't have time to tell the whole story, but I have been able to convert it to good, to use for for others. And when I am present to my pain, when I am bringing God into the pain and the suffering, and these 12 steps into it, everything that I go through, everything that I face, man, I get to use it to help another human being. And that gives my pain meaning, and that gives my pain purpose. And that is the economy of grace. Everything gets used, whether it is the depth of my shame or my present pain, it all gets used and nothing is wasted. And it all turns out. So I get to help others. I get to be an agent for God. And I get to experience a life beyond anything that I could have ever imagined. And I don't mean monetarily. I mean a peace, a presence, a joy, a purpose, a feeling that, man, I'm not alone in this thing anymore. And I get to be of real help to others. And if you have not had this experience, if you've not experienced what's really on offer in Alcoholics Anonymous, the true freedom, let us help you. Our very lives depend on it. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Wow.